Well, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you back again to the Barnabas Study, and just spending some time today talking about a variety of just different books that have been helpful to me over the years. And Brother Ernie Jolly has had a great impact on my ministry. He has now passed on and gone on to his reward, but he was a great man. And certainly to the previous generation, his name is kind of, as the passage of time, his name is kind of cycling out of our generation. Very few people now are familiar with him as they have been in times past. His very excellent work that he did for Word of Flame was in the adult Sunday school books, and if you can get your hands on some of the old volumes of the Word of Flame Adult Sunday School Quarterly, especially the hardbound volumes. What Brother Jolly's great value in my thoughts was that he was the one that created the bibliography. And if you can go back and look at some of those books there's a lot of those, I believe, that he was in the 60s and 70s and the 80s whenever he was on the editorial staff there at Word of Flame. And he did an excellent job of being able to track down those books. And so I would like to talk to you about another character, or another writer rather, that Brother Jolly kind of put me on to early on. And then after I became friends with Brother Harrell in Bridge City, Texas, Brother Harrell, again, huge impact on my ministry. He also had a real love for this pastor. His name is Clarence McCartney. And Clarence McCartney was born in 1879. He passed away in 1957. And he served as a pastor primarily in Presbyterian churches, and his sermons were published in books, and in times past they would publish just sermons. They don't do that as much now as what they did in times past. So some of these old sermon books are starting to get out of circulation. But Brother Jolly encouraged me to get these small paperback volumes from Kriegel Publications, and most of these books run anywhere in the neighborhood, usually of 125 pages to, say, 175 pages. And here are just four of these, and I have a whole bookshelf just right up here to the left that's probably 2 feet long, that has probably, I'd say, probably close to 30 volumes of his books. Now, I'll share just a few of these with you, and you can seek out and trace out some of these. This book is called Parallel Lives of the Old and New Testaments. And what Clarence McCartney does is he takes these characters and he will compare, and then he will contrast the differences between these two characters. He does that with David and Peter. That's one message. He does it with Moses and Paul. He does so with Ezekiel and John the Apostle. He does so with Elijah and John the Baptist, and there's others that he works with whenever he starts describing each one of these individual characters as he walks through in their lives. There's another one that is a very good, and a lot of these, if you read these books, what they do is they kind of prompt things in your mind, and then later on you can even track down other characters that he has not mentioned because your mind has been provoked. This is this volume is called Great Interviews of Jesus. And what he does is he goes down and begins to work through. Most of these come from the Gospel of John. He talks about he has a interview with a murderer and a liar. That's in John 8:44. With a much married woman, John chapter 4. The man who wore chains. A tree climbing politician. With a harlot, that's in John chapter 8. With the man they could not hush, that's in John chapter 9. I'll let you find out who that is about. And he has an interview with a man that cursed him. That's in John 21. That's another one that I'll let you track down on your own. But what these books do is they really work toward just prompting your imagination and your thinking. I want to read to you just a brief portion out of the one where that he is with a much married woman. This is the woman at the well in John chapter 4. Here's what it says. Jesus said to her, "If thou knewest what it is that saith unto thee," or if thou knewest who it is that saith unto thee, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him. And then McCartney goes on. He says, "How often our great opportunities meet us by the way. They speak to us, they plead with us, tarry for a little, and then unrecognized they leave us." And then he uses that expression, "if thou knewest." Think of that. If you knew how God comes to you in His providences, in that joy that almost lifted you up to the sky, in that sorrow that almost plunged you into darkness and despair, in the piercings of the conscience when it was reproached by some transgression, in the whisper of the Holy Spirit which called you to a higher life, in that mother that loved you and toiled for you, in that little child through whose eyes streamed the light of heaven, in that woman who loved you and cared for you. Oh, these lost chances, these opportunities to drink of the waters of peace and satisfaction. Too bad that so many never know these visitors from heaven until they are gone. And then no pangs of regret, no tears, no entreaties, no prayers at all can bring them back. And Brother Jolly was right. This book is worth the paragraph that I have just read to you. You can see I've underlined that in red ink. This is the kind of material that you'll find from Clarence McCartney. And so Clarence McCartney, Parallel Lives of the Old Testament, 12 Great Questions About Christ. He's got another one here called Chariots of Fire. Subtitle of that is a collection of sermons on lesser known Bible characters. And there are just some very excellent choices that you can come across. I would also mention to you, I'll read some of those off to you. He has one called The Greatest Text in the Bible. He's got a sort of an autobiographical book called The Making of a Minister. And in that book just talks about some of his interactions that he had in pastoral ministry, talks about how he developed sermons, talks about preaching with notes, preaching without notes, and just working toward being somebody that takes preaching very seriously. Another book that he has are The Great Nights in the Bible. He's got another one that is a very good book. It's called The Trials of Great Men in the Bible. Have you ever thought about just giving consideration to the great trials that men had in the Bible, and how those great trials, that they either shaped them in the direction of being something that God had called them to be, or it ruined them? And I believe that very well same thing takes place in our lives today, that there are trials that come in our direction, and we can either use those trials to help us to progress on to become the disciples that the Lord wants us to become, or we can allow those trials to become a snare of the devil, a trap. that causes to confuse us and to lose our footing in our Christian walk. So again, I would recommend to you Clarence McCartney, Chariots of Fire. A very good study to let yourself get involved in. And so thanks for watching, and until next time, the Lord bless you. Thank you for watching this video.